So for this video, I'm going to talk about the legacy and just the story of Black Wall Street. And just to clarify, there were multiple Black Wall Streets in the late 1800s, early 1900s. But for this video, I'm going to specifically talk about the Black Wall Street located in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So Black Wall Street was a prosperous Black community or a Black business district in the early 1900s. They had their own profitable school system, grocery stores, restaurants, theaters, and multiple other entities. But unfortunately, on June 1st, 1921, the Greenwood district was bombed and burned down to the ground by a group of angry white Oklahomians or Oklahoman. And how do you say that? I don't know how to say that word, but I think I'm saying it right. Oklahomians. I'm from New York, so I don't know. Within 24 hours, this one of America's wealthiest communities in history was destroyed, and it left over 9,000 people homeless, and 300 Black people were killed during this massacre. But it's essential to understand why Black people chose Oklahoma as the place to start this Black Wall Street. Why and how they started it. So after 1865, America abolished slavery, and the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, yes, it freed the slaves, but there are also negative effects to this freedom, because it left the majority of African Americans homeless, no property, and penniless as well. They didn't have resources given to them once they were granted their freedom. So this left a lot of African Americans in search for better opportunities, and they were fighting for their survival. They were looking for any place to migrate to start a better life. So Oklahoma was a place that African Americans chose because it had a vast amount of land, and originally it was granted to African Americans and Native Americans. So African Americans chose the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, to start this Black Wall Street. And as they started their Black Wall Street, with the time period, the Jim Crow laws were in place. So they almost used these laws to their advantage to develop this illustrious community, because Black people had no choice but to live with one another and do business and trade with one another. So what that did was recycle the Black dollar multiple times. In this community specifically, the Black dollar was recycled 36 to 100 times. And in some cases, the Black dollar wouldn't leave till up to a year. And in contrast to today, where the Black dollar, you're lucky if you see the Black dollar stay in the Black community for more than 8 hours. So that just puts things into perspective of how interdependent this Black Wall Street community was. This is a community with over 600 businesses, over 31 grocery stores, 21 restaurants, and they had 6 private planes. And that's no small feat to have 6 private planes. Even in today's society, that means that you have to have a great amount of wealth to attain those planes. So this city was I would say it was mind-blowing, even in today's standards of what they were able to accomplish. I mean, they had their own bus system, their own schools, and 2 newspapers that covered the local and global news. So they were very self-sufficient. Very self-sufficient. I mean, to the point where the outside white communities became envious, because here you saw this Black community not needing the help of of others. They were able to do for self, and to the point where they were doing better than other white communities. They had their own. This Black Wall Street had their own indoor plumbing system at a time where it was very rare to see that. This Black Wall Street had the upper and middle class had a majority of upper and middle class. I mean, they had black doctors walking around that city. They had black physicians, black lawyers, black teachers that served as role models for the youth to look up to. I mean, these black doctors established schools for the youth. So they weren't only recycling money, they were recycling knowledge. So to give that next generation the proper resources to even further develop the Black Wall Street. So they did a lot. They did a lot of great things. And going back to that jealousy of the white community, they became more and more envious. They said, how could this black community be thriving economically while we don't even have indoor plumbing? We don't even have a sufficient bus system as this black community. We need to do something about this. That's what the outside white communities were thinking. So their tensions started to boil, and they were coming up with plans of how can we bring down this Greenwood community where the blacks are doing well. So on May 30th, 1921, a young white woman claimed that a young black man had attempted to sexually assault her in an elevator in downtown Tulsa, Oklahoma. So word got out. The young man was eventually sent to the courthouse jail, and outside the jail there was just a mob of angry whites and KKK members that wanted revenge. They wanted this case gave them cause to bomb and infiltrate the Black Wall Street. So in a 24-hour span, the group of whites they came into the Greenwood district. They bombed the whole city. They looted the once profitable stores. They murdered over 300 African Americans, and they left, like I said before, they left over 9,000 African Americans homeless. This is one of the most brutal massacres in American history, but it oftentimes goes untold. So it's important that we talk about that, because to have such a illustrious community like Black Wall Street is remarkable even today. What they were able to accomplish, 600 businesses, man. 600 businesses, with the fact that this was a city of only 15,000 people, a population with 15,000 people and 600 businesses. They were really moving. They were really progressive. And I talk about this story because I like to bring it back to today. I like to bring it back to today because it's attainable that we could reach this again. This Black Wall Street, these communities where we're self-sufficient, we're independent, we're independent, and we're not reliant on other communities to help us out economically. In today's society, we could definitely do it, because black people are wealthier than they've ever been before. Statistically, as a whole, they're wealthier than they've ever been before. We're more employed than we've been before. We have technology in our favor to begin to create these Black Wall Streets in various cities around the country. And the story of Black Wall Street shows you that, hey, this is no fairy tale. We could do this. This is definitely attainable. We have the resources in front of us to get to work and start this movement. And there's people out here today that have been, starting this movement and making strides in our community. And in the description below, I put a link of a couple black-owned businesses that I've shopped at before and I've used, and I think that they have great products. And if you know a couple others, you can leave some in the comments as well, because it's important that we share this knowledge of, you know, the great black businesses that are doing work, and we support them, because that's what it's about. We want to get to a point where we're supporting black business on a regular basis, and we could get everything we need from these black-owned businesses, like how they did in Tulsa, how they did in Black Wall Street. They had their own grocery stores, they had their own hospital system, they had their own bus system, they had their schools. You know, all the necessary needs that they had to attain, they could get in their community. You know, they didn't have to rely on other to go outside the community to get things. You know, Black Wall Street, they were really doing it. And this is the early 1900s. You got to think about that time period. This is less than 60 years from when slavery was legal. And they had limited resources, and they were still able to pool their funds together and create the Black Wall Street. So I just wanted to tell that story because it gives us inspiration to try to recreate that. And individually, we don't have to recreate that on that same physical city of Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street could be you going to your mom and pop, your local black-owned mom and pop store, you know, once a week, or, you know, once a month. That even helps. Or if you do business with another black person, that could be your Black Wall Street. So you don't have to think of it as a large, full scale like how Tulsa, Oklahoma made it. But eventually, we want to get to that point where throughout the country, we have multiple Black Wall Streets where we could do business with. So if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, share it, like it, do whatever, comment, tell me what you thought about the story, if you heard it before or if it's your first time. Yeah,